Hello, and welcome to Voices from the Field, a Mayford podcast where we talk with educators in the field to hear about their perspectives and experiences. My name is Jake Burson, Advocacy Chair for Mayford, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Nick Morse. Nick is a passionate and dedicated second-year health and physical education teacher for the Blackstone Millville Regional School District, where he teaches at Hartnett Middle School. Currently, Nick is responsible for teaching health education to students in fourth and fifth grade and physical education to students in sixth and seventh grade. Nick earned a bachelor's degree from Bridgewater State University in 2023 and has returned to BSU to complete a graduate program in health and physical education. Nick is also a member of the Mayford Board, where he serves as vice president of the athletics division. In his personal life, Nick enjoys golfing and snowmobiling with his friends and family members and loves to try new foods. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Good to have you. Thank you for having me on the show. It's great to be
Definitely.
joined by you and I'm really looking forward to connecting with, other colleagues in our field.
Awesome. That sounds great. It's really good to connect with you. And thanks so much for saying yes to the podcast. Before we get started, Nick, this is the question I like to ask the guests. That's what's making you smile these days?
Oh, what's making me smile these days? I think it's just, we're in summer, or
Mhm.
even though, I have two graduate courses going on right now and I'm teaching a summer enrichment program, the pace of life is just, a lot slower and you can kind of sit back and appreciate the people, your friends, your family members that are in your life and, that you get to experience every day.
Definitely. It's good to have that some of that downtime to just spend time with family. I get you. So, Nick, tell us more about who you are and how you started your education journey.
So as Jake mentioned, my name is Nick Morse. I was born and raised in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. I've been here my entire life. I just wrapped up my second year as a health and PE teacher for the Blackstone Millville Regional School District. I teach specifically at Hartnett Middle School, and I'm responsible for teaching PE to grades 6 and 7, and then health ed to grades 4 and 5. I did earn a bachelor's degree in teacher licensure from BSU in 2023, and I immediately decided to go back for my master's degree in PE and health with the goal of finishing the graduate program by the fall of 2026. At this moment in time, I'm a little bit about halfway through that program, and it's been honestly the program's been amazing. Being able to just take so many different courses related to a ton of different topics within the fields of health, phys ed, kinesiology, nutrition, psychology. It's really added to my teaching repertoire. In the spring of 2024, I joined the Mayford board as the vice president elect of athletics, and currently I am the vice president of athletics, and we are looking for presenters for our fall conference. So I know that's coming up quickly.
Definitely.
In terms of my personal life, you kind of mentioned a couple things. I've always been an outdoor enthusiast, whether that's, your typical sports, baseball, basketball. I played football and lacrosse growing up, but I'm also really into walking, hiking, and more of your kind of woodsy type things. And that's really grown on me over the last couple of years. And then, as you also mentioned, I also have this insane passion for food. I love trying new foods, especially seafood restaurants, whether it's down the Cape or down in Narragansett or the Newport area.
Well, we'll have to talk offline about that. My folks used to have a cottage in Rhode Island, in Charleston, which is close to Narragansett, so we can share notes about the seafood restaurants down there. I love seafood too.
Oh, I love everything about seafood.
That's great. That's great, Nick. So, Nick, let's talk a little bit about your journey into the field. What inspired you to pursue a career in this field?
So my journey into the field, it actually started from a really young age when my parents, at the time, I thought it was, them forcing me to do something, but I went to summer camp for the town of North Attleboro Park and Rec when I was
Mhm.
entering kindergarten. And basically, this summer camp was an opportunity to engage in tons and tons of different physical activities, from team building activities to icebreakers to your traditional sports to swimming to hiking to ropes courses.
Mhm.
And I was really in my glory as a kid. playing these games. I loved it. I loved being there. I loved the counselors, and I really looked up to the counselors as role models. And even from an early age of first, like a first or second grader, I told myself that, you know what, I wanted to be a camp counselor when I grew up because I admired these people. And then, as I entered middle school, I kind of started to stray around. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I kind of lost some of that passion for physical activity. It's the middle school years.
Right.
But we got into high school, and there was a job posting at my local park and recreation office, and they were hiring camp counselors at the same camp that I had attended as a child. So I brought one home one day, and my parents encouraged me to fill out the application. So I filled out the application. I remember dropping it off at the park and rec department, and a couple days later, I got an interview. So I went through the interview process, and was fortunate enough to be given an opportunity to work as a part-time camp counselor. I believe it was going into my junior year of high school.
Mm-hmm.
From day one, everything about being a camp counselor kind of just came naturally to me, whether it was social interactions with the kids or their families, creating different games and activities, behavior management, activity instruction. I just loved all of it. And quickly, I rose from a part-time worker. I was originally scheduled Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, to by the end of the 8-week program that summer, working 5 days a week alongside some rather veteran employees for the park and recreation department.
Mm-hmm.
And kids started to see me as a role model, much like I saw the counselors as a role model when I was a kid. And I think what really solidified my choices to work in education, to work with children, is one day I remember I got called up to the head desk, this is where the head counselors, the supervisors, kind of hung out during the camp day.
Mm-hmm.
And this girl named Kelly handed me the phone and said there was a call on the line, and I thought for sure, I had done something wrong. Some parent was mad at me for something. Your mind starts to think of all the worst possible outcomes.
Right.
And it was a mother on the phone, and she had 3 camp kids in the program, and she just wanted to say thank you for being such a positive influence to her kids for that summer. I had all 3 kids in our second grade group together, and this was really the kids' first experience in public since their father had passed away.
Oh, wow.
And it was that moment that's what I knew I wanted to do this. I knew I made the right decision filling out that application at the park and rec department. And I knew this could be a career that was satisfying, and that I deeply appreciated the opportunity to impact, people around me, especially kids. So as the years went on, I continued working for the park and recreation department. I ended up working there for 8 summers in total. As I neared the end of my high school career, I started touring schools around the New England area for their education programs. I had
Mm-hmm.
narrowed it down at that point. I wanted to teach phys ed. I remember I toured Rhode Island College, URI, and Bridgewater State. I had a phenomenal tour at Bridgewater State, and ultimately I decided to attend there as a first generation college student. None of my family members had ever gone to college,
Wow.
and I was eager to take this opportunity. I
Quick.
graduated from Bridgewater
Mm-hmm.
in 4 years. I was one of those the COVID era college kids.
All right.
And, I love my Bridgewater experience, so much.
So it sounds like in your experience, you had some solid experiences and solid events that really solidified what you want to do in the future. One being a camp counselor. Were there any mentors or any teachers that stood out for you along the way? Are there any educators that kind of helped guide you and encourage you?
Yeah. So when I think back to all the people that impacted me, I mean, there's so many. I played Little
Mhm.
League baseball. I had coaches, Pop Warner football coaches that impacted me. I had a high school lacrosse coach that impacted me. But I think there were really three teachers, when I was thinking about this question that stood out in my mind. And two of them kind of make sense based on the field that I went into, and then one of them is kind of a little different. So the first one was I had a high school physical education teacher,
Hmm.
Mr. Chris Perrin, who also taught. He was the Bridgewater State University men's basketball coach for a number of years. And he really afforded me a semi student teaching experience before I even knew what student teaching was. I had never gone to college. I had no idea what the teacher education program was like or what it
Hmm.
was like to get a teacher license and to go out in the field for your pre-practicum and your practicum. But he offered a course in high school called Leadership and Sport Management. And that was a class taken by freshmen and sophomores, but it was run by the seniors. So the seniors would put together all the activities, they would lead the activities, they would help out Mr. Perrin with the grading, the assessment, activity breakdown, activity setup. So it was really getting that firsthand experience before I even left high school.
Mm.
And the same thing I can say about a lady named Melanie Bresson. Um, she was a high school health teacher, and her passion for health was unlike anything I've ever seen before. She could take even some of the most disturbing, worrisome, just kind of gut wrenching and somber topics within health education,
Hmm.
and she would teach them in a way that gave us the skills and the confidence needed to make healthy decisions throughout our life. And I think she really showed us the passion of and the opportunity that, if you take your health seriously, here's all the positive things that can open up in your life. And then finally, I had an eighth grade social studies teacher. So this was a little before high school. Her name was Michelle Langevin.
Hmm.
And yeah, you might ask, how does social studies connect with PE and health? The reality is it doesn't. But Mrs. Langevin, she had this ability to interact with all her students. She knew everything about every single one of her students. She knew their academic strengths, their academic weaknesses, what kids did in their free time, how were they involved in the community. And she really built that connection of showing, okay, we're in school to learn and to get educated, but we can also do this in a manner that is compassionate towards everybody
Hmm.
and that really truly understands what all students are going through. And she did a phenomenal job connecting and just modeling how to be such a positive role model for all students. And to this day, I still remember, her joking around with us, and we had a good time, and it was really just showed, you know, she cared about us, and it was extremely evident.
Wow. That sounds really amazing that you had those experiences. So it was Michelle, Miss Bresson, you said, and Mr. Perrin, right? Those three
Yep.
individuals who really made an impact. Something you said earlier, I just want to touch upon. You said that she knew everything about not only the students' academic life, but also their kind of their personal life, their hobbies, what they did for fun. And I think that's so important as educators, as teachers, that we get to know our students at a deeper level. And it's not just the content. We have to know about them before we can teach them the content, and you just outlined it perfectly why. So it's really good to hear that. So Nick, moving on to different types of skills that you teach in your setting. What type of skills do you teach?
So, I mean, I kind of can answer this question in two different ways. I'm going to start off with kind of what I believe, because obviously I teach, the state standards and the phys ed standards, the health
Mm-hmm.
standards. But ultimately, my goal is I try to teach kids to be happy and
Mm-hmm.
healthy. These are pretty broad ideas, but they encapsulate kind of all the key outcomes of a quality PE and health program. In health class, I'm trying to teach a skills based approach, teaching kids how to make responsible decisions, refusal skills, seeking out information and resources.
Mm-hmm.
In PE, you're teaching them psychomotor skills. You're trying to get them cognitively aware of different strategy that can be used during all sorts of activity. But ultimately, you're trying to create a situation where you're trying to teach students skills and give them the knowledge that later on in their lifespan, they can go out with their friends and their family members and their kids and be able to participate in an activity and really value their experience.
Mm,
I want to be able to, give my students the opportunity to live a life where they have, quality physical health, quality emotional health, quality social health, you
mm.
know. And I think that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to teach students those skills. I know we sometimes, I'm sure you know it as an educator, we kind of get bogged down in thinking about, oh, we're going to teach this specific skill because this is what's in the framework and all that. But at the
Oh
end of
yeah.
the day, I'm trying to teach students how to use what we learn in PE and health to bring value and enjoyment to their life.
Happy and healthy. And I think what you said about the value is key. I mean, if we can get students to really appreciate and value their own health, it's just going to help benefit them throughout their life. So kudos to you for doing that work and for having this approach. I really like that. Also, the research states that exercise and activities are so important, but also not only that, but having the leisure and the recreation. It's not just about the psychomotor skills, but also how to have fun, how to maybe play disc golf, doing different activities that are not your typical um, content areas that might be offered. So that's really good. So, Nick, take us through a typical day in the life of yourself, of your school. What happens at 8 o'clock on?
My days are crazy. I'm an early bird. I do a lot of stuff before school, but my day really starts at 7:40 every Monday through Friday.
Hmm.
That's when the first set of kids walk through those double doors at Hartnett Middle School. Um, I start a I run a Healthy Start morning program. So this is 20 minutes at 7:40 to 8 o'clock.
Hmm.
Parents can drop their kids off. And this is an opportunity for students to kind of get some energy out before the start of the day. And typically, I offer a couple different activities. Most of them relate to whatever unit we're doing at the time. But just to keep it simple, say we're doing a unit on pickleball and forehand striking and all that.
Hmm.
I will set up some nets in the gymnasium, and any student that gets dropped off early can have the opportunity to, practice their forehand strike skills, practice their backhand, practice serving, and ultimately just get some movement in before the start of the school day. And then once 8 o'clock rolls around, it's more of it's your standard school day for me. I teach from 8 to 2:30 every day.
Hmm.
I have four, sixth, or seventh grade phys ed classes every day with one fourth or fifth grade health class. Um, I do have to share the gym, so most of my free time during the day is spent switching around activities in the gymnasium, cleaning up my workspace, trying to finish up any leftover tasks.
Hmm.
Usually I'm out of school by 3:30, and I always try to stay after school for half an hour. And I understand that, most middle school students are not seeking out their phys ed teacher for help on their health work, or, it's not like math or English where they have questions, but I always try to make myself available
Hmm.
and at least let students know that I'm after school if they ever need something, whether that's related to PE or health, or if they just need to talk to me about something that, some students that, they build a relationship with you and they feel comfortable coming to you if they have a concern.
Hmm. That's good.
Um,
Have the students ever taken you up on that?
I have I've had a couple over the last 2 years.
Hmm.
A couple of them were for, your standard. I have a question on this material from health. Can you explain it to me?
Hmm.
But I remember I had a fifth grade boy who was just he was having a tough time on the school bus, but he didn't know who to talk to because he didn't really have a connection with his classroom teacher.
I see.
But I saw him in the morning in my morning program. I saw him during class, and I'd see him after school because he also did an after school program through the school. So over time, we built a pretty solid connection. So he came to me and brought his concerns about the bus, and then ultimately that led me to just bringing those concerns up to administration and kind of resolving the issue. So it does feel good knowing that you know yeah, not a lot of kids take advantage of, staying after, but for those students that need it, I am available.
Right. They have that option, which is good. That's
Uh,
good.
most
Go ahead.
most days once I get done with school, it's crazy time. I try to get to the gym every day at about 3:30, 4 o'clock. I'll work out for an hour, and then it's home, shower, spend some time with family, and
Mhm.
then I am in grad school, so most of the second half of my day is spent doing some grad work, you know, trying to finish up this master's degree, and then my goal every night is a 9:45 bedtime, which rarely ever happens, and then we start the next day all over again.
It's a cycle, right?
It's it's a cycle, all right, and it's like clockwork during the school year. But once summer vacation hits, initially it is hard to break the cycle, but once I break the cycle, things change drastically.
Absolutely. No, I totally understand. Nick, just going back to a little bit about the students. So you see fourth and fifth once every 2 weeks for health, and then sixth and seventh once every week for PE. How long are the classes?
So I think our standard class time is 58 minutes
Okay, so
with
almost an hour.
if you have a lunch period class, it might be 106 or 107. So an
Hmm.
hour and 6 minutes or an hour and 7 minutes. So I do have pretty long classes,
Hmm.
but there's no denying it. That's a tough schedule to teach
Right.
quality PE and health in. I mean, once a week for health for fourth and fifth grade. I mean, yeah, once every 2 weeks for fourth and fifth grade health. That's nearly impossible to build any continuity between the material. I mean,
Right.
if a kid is absent,
Or there's a holiday. Right.
or if there's a holiday, I mean, I could
Right.
go over a month without seeing certain kids in health.
Right.
I mean, PE is not as bad with them having class once a week, but
Hmm.
still, you have a Monday holiday, or you have a vacation, or you have a student that's out. It could be 2 or 3 weeks before you still see them in PE. But
Right.
I think the good news is this upcoming school year, the 25-26 school year, we have a new schedule that's being implemented. And while it's not perfect, it's not ideal, it will help create more continuity between health and phys ed. So this upcoming school year, all students in grades 4 through 7 are going to have 1 quarter of PE and health. So that means three days a week are going to be dedicated for phys ed, and 2 days a week will be dedicated for health.
Okay.
Is that enough based on state guidelines and all that and national recommendations? Absolutely not. But it is a step in the right direction from administration, from our district leaders, from our PE wellness department
Hmm.
to really emphasize the benefits of physical activity and a quality program for our students, physical, mental, and social well-being.
Absolutely. So they're moving in the right direction. So maybe a couple years down the road, they'll increase the time and dec decrease the lapse in between when you see the students. So that's good to hear. That's the silver lining, right?
Yeah, as most things in education, it needed to happen faster.
I agree. So, Nick, let's talk a little bit about how you engage and support. How do you include all your learners in class?
You know, I really base a lot of my instruction, especially in physical education, using self-determination theory.
Hmm.
And this was a theory I learned in a psychology of exercise class at Bridgewater State by Dr. Jennifer Vos. Self-determination theory states that basically students will engage in a learning experience, whatever that might be. It could be a social studies class, could be English, could be physical education or health ed, when three things are met: autonomy in the experience. So basically, students have choices for how they want to engage in the material.
Hmm.
Number two, competence, the ability to improve their craft or their skill. And three, relatedness, opportunities for social support. So I try to do this a number of different ways in PE. Number one, I always offer a competitive and recreational opportunity for whatever activity that we're doing at the time. So I'll go back to the pickleball example that I used earlier. Regardless if we're doing the forehand, the backhand, or we're working on different, talking about creating space in the front of the court, the back of the court. I always offer students the choice of recreation or competitive. And what this means is if students select the recreational opportunity, they're still doing the exact same activity as everybody else in class, but oftentimes it's at a much slower pace and with students of their like ability.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, if students select the competitive option, they're still doing the same activity. They're still learning all the same psychomotor skills, all the same cognitive skills, but it's a faster pace. It's with students that want a challenge. And I found that by offering students this competitive and recreational option, students are buying into the program because they know they're not going to be put on a spotlight, if they're struggling or if they're excelling.
Hmm.
They have options for how they want to participate in the experience. It's almost like a semi challenge by choice from adventure education,
Hmm.
but really just kind of taking out the adventure ed part and just keeping the challenge by choice, offering them opportunities to participate how they feel will best suit them. Other ways that I really embrace this philosophy is I always do a walk and talk for attendance. Typically, this is actually outside. So at the start of the period, all the kids come in. I have them sit down for attendance. I always like to do that because I think it sets the tone for the class.
Hmm.
And then we'll go outside as long as my district has a pretty lax policy. As long as it's 40 degrees or above outside, you can take the kids out. So I'll do a lap around the building. It ends up being about a little over a quarter of a mile. And I just let the kids walk and talk with their friends. Most of these kids spend all day in a classroom and they're, traditional class experience. They're expected to be, rather quiet, listening to the teacher, kind of following along. They need opportunities to just have discourse with their peers, figure out what's going on in their friends' lives. What video games are they into? What sports are they in? Did they go someplace last night to a new restaurant? So I think that really builds the social support and the relatedness. I found that students have had more acceptance and a greater desire to work with one another now that they've built that connection on those walks. Other things I like to do, I play music during class. I am certainly one of those teachers. I have a hard time teaching in silence. Even even sometimes even while I'm giving directions, not that this is, ideal teaching, I'll have the music going. It might just be turned down. I think it creates an atmosphere when done correctly that takes a lot of the stress off the students because the reality is for some students, the gymnasium and phys ed is really not their cup of tea. It makes them anxious and stressed out. But I think having the music on helps to establish an environment that's like not necessarily carefree, that we don't, as a teacher, doesn't care what's going on, but just helps lowers the stress level. And then finally, for PE, at the end of each unit, I always do a free choice day. And this isn't a typical free choice day where, your classic example of the teacher rolling out the balls mentality. This is a free choice day based on what we've covered. So, say, for example, we've done a unit on pickleball and we've done a unit on badminton.
Hmm.
Maybe at the end of the month, the free choice day would be I set up 6 courts in our gym because that's the most we can have based on space. And students, you need to select one of the options. You can play badminton with your friends or you can play pickleball. I don't really care which one you pick as long as you are active the entire period. You're you're following all the rules and you're working on your skills. So you could have some students playing badminton, you have some students playing pickleball. And I think this has been an opportunity to really incorporate student voice because they have a say in how they want to, once again, experience the material. If you're working on a tactic of creating space on the court, you can accomplish both of those by playing pickleball or in a badminton unit.
Hmm.
But in this opportunity or in this situation, the students at least have a say in, which type of racket do they want to use? Do they want to use a ball versus a birdie? Which rules do they prefer, etc. And then, how do I use this approach in health class? I mean, health is a little more structured. you have to make sure you're following the students' IEPs, their 504 accommodations and all that. But I just try to keep it, you know, use inclusive language all the time, use learner-friendly materials, make sure you have multiple modalities of expression, have your visuals, have your auditory explanations, have your demonstrations still.
Mhm.
Um, I always do project-based learning in health. And one of the reasons I do so is I don't think a test is a very good indicator of whether students have learned the material, but project-based learning places students at the forefront of their own learning and how they once again want to show that they've crafted something. So give students, a choice board. They could do a jigsaw for a final project. Maybe they're doing non-vertical permanent surfaces, which is, I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's just a fancy thing of standing up in kind of like a gallery walk in a sense. Maybe it's a hexagonal thinking project. But it's really, I try to give the students as much freedom and empowerment as possible within the classroom. And at the end of the day, even in health, whatever I can do to get them out of their seats and moving around the classroom more, I will always do. You know, there's been a plethora of research that shows that students spend too much time sitting and staring at screens throughout the school day and not enough time moving. So, that's where the PE teacher in me really comes out within health.
Mm. And Nick, you have a unique situation because you're not only teaching PE, but you're in the classroom teaching health. And although there's two different content areas, there's some similarity between the two of them. And like you said, you're making sure that they have, when they're testing, they're doing these project-based lessons, this learning experience that's really putting them at the forefront of the content. It's not your traditional style, quote unquote. So that's really good to hear. Nick, what advice do you have to someone entering the field?
Well, where do you start on this one? I mean, as you know, there's so much advice you could give somebody entering the field. But I mean, I'm going to give the advice that back, as I told the story about getting my first job at the parking wreck, the
Mhm.
director told us new hires on our first day, build relationships with your campers. Well, in this case, it would be build relationships with your students. Take the time to truly get to know all of your students academically and out of school. Figure out what they're strong at, what they struggle at. Figure out their hobbies, their interests, their favorite foods, their favorite music, what they like to do in their free time. You know, Figure out a little bit about their home life. You don't have to go crazy and be some investigative detective, but just build a solid relationship with the students. Give them high fives, give them a fist bump. Let them show them that you care.
Mm.
It's one thing to ask them, but it's another thing to show them. You know, and it doesn't really matter how good your lesson plan is at the end of the day, or how well you can teach the material or assess the material or communicate with the parents if the kids don't feel safe in your classroom and feel connected with you. So my advice ultimately is to, number one, build relationships with your students. And my second piece of advice, and this is something that, we tell all our students all the time, you need to get involved. I mean, I don't know how many times I heard that when I was a high school student by the guidance department, you know, by administrators, like, you need to get involved because college is like that.
Mm.
In the same sense, we as teachers need to get involved. You know, I some of the best teachers I had growing up, they weren't just teachers. They were teachers and coaches. They were teachers and club advisors. They were teachers and fitness instructors after school. They were teachers, but they also attended students' music and band conferences after school hours. So I think, and I know this isn't the case for everyone. Everyone has different family situations, so it might not be possible, but when possible, get involved in your student's life. You know, sh show up to things that maybe a student might not expect you to show up to,
Mm.
and it completely changes everything. They immediately start buying into your program and kind of what you're projecting on them. And so those are my two things. And they're ultimately they're kind of the same thing in a sense. Build relationships with students and get involved with what your students are doing, obviously in an appropriate fashion.
Right. Well said, Nick. I agree 100%. Nick, what's an initiative that you've started at your school? You mentioned earlier about the Healthy Start Club. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the Healthy Start Club, I got hired at Blackstone Middle School for the fall of 2023. And at the time of my interview, the principal asked me, what is one initiative that you could start? And, I had no idea at the time, to be honest with you. I was sitting there. I remember that question completely stumped me during my interview. But at the end of the interview, I was like, what if we, do you have a before school program or an after school program where kids can come in and just freely play? Obviously, there needs to be structure. There needs to be adult supervision. But
Mhm.
is there something where it's not really recess where they're just running around aimlessly, but a more structured setting where students can practice what they're doing in PE? And she said no. So I'm like, what if we do a before school program? Kids can get dropped off early. It'll be a stipend position, but they'll have an opportunity to further engage with the content. And she thought it was a good idea. I really liked it. I didn't know what to call it. That was actually the Healthy Start name was actually crafted by my co-teacher at the time. But this, like I said earlier, this is the club where students, they get dropped off early by their parents in the gym with the goal to kickstart their brain and their body positively for the day. Um, as I mentioned earlier, typically students will receive an activity at the start of the week that has to do with the PE content. So if we're working on our overhand throws, maybe it's an activity related to something along the lines of practicing your overhand throws, hitting targets, or it could be if we're working on a backhand strike in badminton or pickleball, doing some more net exposure activities. But nonetheless, it's this enrichment opportunity where students can make their own teams. Students can pick how long they want to play. Maybe they want to play for 5 minutes and then kind of just relax and get their head on straight for the start of the day. Maybe they
Mhm.
want to play the entire time. But at the end of the day, this program has grown to roughly 50 to 75 kids attending daily,
Well,
which for context, we are a school of 450 kids. So I
so
mean,
yeah, and so 50 to 75 kids attend daily, and are they the same s- students, or does it vary depending on can they just be dropped off, or do they have to sign up ahead of time?
they can be dropped off.
Okay.
So any student that does not want to engage physically, while all are encouraged,
Hmm.
it is I can't make them all participate in the activity.
Right.
They can sit on the bleachers. So some of them are simply parent drop-offs. Their parents have to get to work early. This
Hmm.
is the only option for them. Some of them are kids that their friends actually started coming to the program and they wanted to spend extra time with their friends. So they asked their parents if they could come early as well. They don't
That's so
even
cool.
engage with the activity. They just simply want to spend some extra time and be social with their friends.
Hmm.
And then there's I call them, they're, they're the heavy hitters. These are the kids that they think they're on the competitive United States Olympic roster from 7:40 to 8 o'clock every morning. They're there strictly to show off their dominance in whatever activity we're doing because they simply love sports. They love athletics. They just love movement.
Hmm. That's really cool. So it sounds like you have a wide variety of students coming to you, but you also offer something to those students, whether it be a social experience or, like you said, an enrichment opportunity for the students to practice what they've been learning in physical education class. So that's really great. I love that. So Nick, how has phys ed and health changed since you first started? What are some things you've seen?
Well, I mean, there hasn't been, a whole lot of change. I've only been in the field really for two, I would say, main years. But I would like to, take a minute and just say, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education introduced the new updated comprehensive health and PE framework.
Hmm.
And this was a big change for our district because prior to me coming into the district, our district still used the curriculum from 1999. So they never even made any attempts at following, shapes, guidelines for PE or for health. They were
Right,
strictly and solely focused on the 1999 mass curriculum.
right, right.
So so I guess for our entire PE wellness department in the district, it was a massive learning curve. I'm the newest member in the district, so a lot of it came naturally to me because I did my student teaching, in
Mhm.
which Bridgewater prepares us. We were kind of we were bouncing back and forth between the mass curriculum from '99 and then shapes guidelines that were more updated. But it was that I would say that's where the field has changed the most. We now have a solid foundational updated curriculum for phys ed and health that is skills based, that looks to address the entire student, their physical health, their mental health, and their social health.
Mhm.
And I think the passage of that framework, at least for our district, had ripple effects everywhere. So I think, on the outside of it, you look at it as, oh, look, the PE and health department, they got a new framework. Like kind of what's the big deal? It's just updating to reflect, 2023, 2024, our times. But for our district and specifically, it changed PE and health. I know I talked about earlier how, students only have health once every 2 weeks and only had PE once a week.
Mhm.
But the passage of this curriculum by DESE really kickstarted conversations in our district from specifically school leadership, curriculum leaders, and district administration about starting to truly, create a schedule for students where they have daily health and PE. And ultimately, we needed the new framework to reinvigorate that conversation. If that framework hadn't been passed or hadn't been created, I mean, it's tough to tell where we would be, but we
Right, right.
most likely probably wouldn't be pushing as hard for your daily health and phys ed.
Interesting. Yeah, no, now that we have this guidance document, we have something to kind of refer to. And like as you mentioned, it's so important to have the holistic framework. It's not just about the PE, but it's also about the mental health and the social health as well, which is equally as important. So that's really cool. So Nick, we're coming to a close on this interview, but a couple more questions. What's something you'd like to see in the future? It could be personal or professional. I know that's kind of a big
Yeah,
question.
I think it comes back to, you know, what type of skills I teach. So I
Mhm.
said earlier, I teach students to be happier and healthier. I would like to see an educational system from DESE all the way to school districts, superintendents, PE teachers, guidance, secretaries that truly value the importance of PE and health and what it can do for students, and how the research clearly shows that an individual's health is immensely benefited physically, socially, emotionally, academically
Mhm.
by engagement in exercise and physical activity. And I'd like to see the point, like, us get to the point that, you look outside and you see all these kids playing outside again, freely running around, not sitting on their tablets, not sitting on their phone, not sitting behind a screen, because they received a quality PE program that gave them the skills they needed and the confidence they needed to be able to go outside and enjoy life, enjoy what life can offer. And I think, like, we're working towards that, but we're not there yet. And I
Me-
and I
Mhm.
just want to get back to that. I'd like to see where every single person values and gets enjoyment out of some sort of physical activity. Could be walking, could be playing team sports, it could be more of your team building activities. It doesn't matter to me personally which one people select. It's that they select something and
Mhm.
that they get benefits from it.
Value, we've been speaking for about 40 minutes, and the word that keeps coming up and that you keep mentioning is relationships and value. So important. And it sounds like, I know you've only been teaching a couple of years, a few years, but you definitely have a lot of the wisdom of a veteran teacher. So I appreciate your expertise and knowledge in this and sharing what you do. It's really important. We keep up the good work, Nick. So kudos to you. So Nick, how can our listeners connect with you?
So my listeners, listeners can connect with me via email.
Hmm.
My personal email is nkmorse@hotmail.com. Or if
Okay.
you want to connect with me more for, phys ed materials or health materials, or have questions about the curriculum per se, I have my school email as well. It's nmorse, MORSE, at bmrsd.net. And then from
Okay.
there, um, I'll be more than happy to set up a Zoom, or I can share my phone number out with individuals who would like to discuss things further.
Thank you, Nick, and we'll make sure to have those uploaded in the show notes. Nick, thank you so much for sharing your experience and expertise with us. We'll have this episode uploaded soon. We're also asking our listeners to rate and share the podcast if it has helped you in any way. Nick, thanks again so much. Really appreciate your wisdom, your expertise, and your time today.
Thank you for having me, Jake, and thank you for to Mayford for giving me the opportunity to be on the podcast.
Thank you.